Good evening, weird ones. Had some terrible technical difficulties getting started. My apologies for the great delay in starting this terribly important fairy tale story time, Fairy Tale Fridays. This will be a weekly event offered free to the community for a wholesome good time of shamanic style fun. I hope you enjoy. Tonight we will be reading this from this wonderful book by William Butler Yeats. Let me put on my spectacles. Have a little water. Hope you have a fine drink to enjoy. Tonight, we read the tale of the Kildare Pooka by Patrick Kennedy. Mr. H.R., when he was alive, used to live a good deal in Dublin, and he was once a great while out of the country on account of the '98 business. But the servants kept on in the big house at Rath, all the same as if the family were all at home. Well, they used to be frightened out of their lives after going to their beds with the banging of the kitchen door and the clattering of the fire irons and the pots and the pans and the dishes. And one evening they sat up ever so long, keeping one another in heart with telling stories about ghosts and fetches, and that when, what would you have of it, the little scullery boy that used to be sleeping over the horses and could not get room at the fire, crept into the hot hearth, and when he got tired listening to the stories, sore fear him, but he fell dead asleep. Well and good, after they were all gone, and the kitchen fire raked up, he was woke with the noise of the kitchen door opening and the trampling of an ass on the kitchen floor. An ass is a type of burro or donkey, I believe. He peeped out, and what should he see but a big ass, sure enough, sitting on his currabingo and yawning before the fire. And after a little he looked about him and began scratching his ears as though he was quite tired, and says he, I may as well begin first as last. The poor boy's teeth began to chatter in his head, for, says he, now he's going to ate me. But the poor fellow with the long ears and tail on him had something else to do. He stirred up the fire, and then he brought in a pail of water from the pump and filled a big pot that he put on the fire before he went out. He then put in his foot, into the hot hearth and pulled out the little boy. He let a roar out of him with the fright, but the Pooka only looked at him and thrust out his lower lip to show how little he valued him, and then he pitched him into his pew again. Well, then he lay down before the fire till he heard the boil coming to the water, and maybe there wasn't a plate, and maybe there wasn't a dish or a spoon on the dresser that he didn't fetch and put into the pot and wash and dry the whole bilin of them as well as e'er a kitchen maid from that to Dublin town. He then put all of them up on their places on the shelves one by one, and if he didn't give a good sweep into the kitchen, leave it till again. Then he comes and sits fornent the boy, and let down one of his ears, and cocked up the other, and gave a wide grin. The poor fellow strove to roar out, but not a deegid had come out of his throat. The last thing the Pooka done was to rake up the fire and walk out, giving such a slap of the door that the boy thought the whole house couldn't help but tumble down upon itself. Well, to be sure, if there wasn't a hullabaloo the next morning when the poor fellow told his story. They could talk of nothing else the whole day. One said one thing, one said another, but a fat lazy scullery girl said the wittiest thing of all. Musha, said she, if the Pooka does be cleaning up everything that way when we are asleep, what should we be slaving ourselves for doing his work? Shugadeen, said another, them's the wisest words you ever said, Koth. It's meself won't contradict you none. So said and so done. Not a bit of a plate or a dish or a cup or a spoon saw a drop of water that evening from anyone, and not a basin was laid on the floor, and every one of them went to bed soon after sundown and slept peacefully the whole night through. Next morning everything was as fine in the kitchen, and the Lord Mayor might eat his dinner off the flags. It was great ease to the lazy servants, you may depend, and everything went on well till a foolhardy gag of a boy said he would stay up one night and have a chat with this Pooka. He was a little daunted when the door was thrown open and the ass marched up to the fire. And then, sir, said he at last, picking up courage, if it isn't taking a liberty, may I ask who you are and why you are so kind as to do half the day's work for the girls every night? No liberty at all, said the Pooka. I'll tell you, and welcome. I was a servant in the time of Squire R's father, and was the laziest rogue that ever was clothed and fed, and done nothing for it. And when my time came for the other world, this is the punishment that was laid on me, to come here every night and do all this labor, and then go back out into the cold. It isn't so bad in the fine weather, but if you only knew what it is to stand with your head between your legs facing the storm and from midnight to sunrise on a bleak winter's night. And could we do anything for your comfort, my poor fellow? Said the boy. Musha, I don't know, said the Pooka, but I think a good quilted frieze coat would help to keep the life in me them long nights. Why then, in troth, we'd be the ungratefullest of people if we didn't feel for you, said the boy. And to make a long story short, the next night but two, the boy was there again, and if he didn't delight the poor Pooka holding up a fine warm coat before him, it's no matter. Between the Pooka and the man, his legs was got into the 4 long arms of it for each one of his legs, and it was buttoned down the breast and the belly with room for the tail and the head, and he looked so pleased. He walked up to the glass to see how he looked. Well, said he, It's a long lane that has no turning. I am much obliged to you and your fellow servants. You have made me happy at long last. Good night to you." So he was walking out, but the other cried, "Ah, I'm sure you're gone too soon. What about the washing and the sweeping?" "Ah, you may tell the girls that they must now get their turn. My punishment was to last until I was thought worthy of a reward for the way I done my duty. You'll see me no more." And no more they did, and right sorry they were for having been in such a hurry to reward the ungrateful Pooka. The end. Thank you so much for coming to Storytime, Fairy Tale Fridays. I'll be telling many other stories, as well as offering all kinds of things such as Qigong classes and other shamanic offerings here on this channel. And you can also find links to my services within my YouTube channel. And with that, I wish you a fine evening and I bid you good night.